Well, let's look at the Middle East now. Our correspondent Anna Foster is in East Jerusalem. Anna, over to you.
Azadeh, thank you very much. Good morning from here, where a lot of focus is on the al-Shifa hospital in Gaza because Israeli forces launched a fresh raid there overnight. It's Gaza's biggest hospital. People in the area and many displaced people are still living in the grounds of al-Shifa as well. Reported the sounds of heavy exchanges of gunfire overnight and in the early hours of this morning. Now, Israel says that they had received information that Hamas had regrouped, because this isn't the first Israeli raid on the hospital during the war. They said that Hamas had regrouped and were once again using al-Shifa as a command and control centre, and that they detained around 80 people. Hamas said that Israel was carrying out a war crime by targeting the hospital. Now, this is an area that we've talked about repeatedly. Of course, the health facilities in Gaza at the moment are in a really difficult and desperate state. We know that medical supplies aren't getting into the Gaza Strip, and treating people is becoming incredibly difficult. So a lot of focus on this raid that has happened overnight. Let's hear from Israel's IDF spokesperson, the Israel Defense Forces spokesperson, who is explaining a little bit more about this raid. This is Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari.
The IDF is conducting a high-precision operation in limited areas of Shifa Hospital, following concrete intelligence that demanded immediate action. We know that senior Hamas terrorists have regrouped inside the Shifa Hospital and are using it to command attacks against Israel. Our targeted mission isn't just an operational necessity, it's a global imperative. Our forces have undergone specified training to prepare them for the sensitive environment and complex scenarios they may encounter. Our war is against Hamas, not against the people of Gaza. We seek no harm to the civilians that Hamas is hiding behind, which is why we will conduct this operation with caution and care, while ensuring that the hospital continues its important functions. For this reason, we have Arabic speakers on the ground so that we can communicate to the patients in the hospital in their own language, and IDF doctors to assist those in need. We will also be conducting a humanitarian effort to provide food, water, and other supplies to the patients and civilians in the hospital compound. There is no obligation for the patients and the medical staff to evacuate the hospital, but there is and will be a passageway for other civilians to exit the hospital. We call upon all Hamas terrorists hiding in hospital, surrender immediately. Medical facilities should never be exploited for terror. Hamas must be held accountable.
That's Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari from the Israel Defense Forces talking about that overnight raid on Gaza's biggest hospital, al-Shifa, a place where medics are still doing their work, a place where patients are still being treated, and also a place where in the compound outside displaced people are still trying to shelter from the fighting. Now, we've also heard in the last 24 hours or so as well from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He made some remarks at the start of the weekly cabinet meeting yesterday, accusing the international community of forgetting about the October the 7th attacks. Now, he was speaking about, well, various things. He was talking about the Israeli military operation in Gaza, but he was also touching on, again, something which there is a lot of focus on at the moment, and that is a potential Israeli ground offensive in the city of Rafah. Now, this is at the very southern end of the Gaza Strip. It's where more than half of Gaza's population are now sheltering. And Mr. Netanyahu was talking about this potential operation, which he has repeatedly said over the last few weeks and months Israel will carry out. But he made some interesting further comments after he met yesterday with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Now, they had been discussing Israel's operation there. They also talked about Rafah. Mr. Scholz, as have many world leaders, expressed concern about the civilians who were in Rafah and the potential of serious harm to them. And let's just hear what was said in the statements afterwards by Benjamin Netanyahu, because he made assurances that before any ground operation began in Rafah, that they would try and move civilians out of the way.
I assured Chancellor Scholz that our goal in eliminating the remaining terrorist battalions in Rafah goes hand in hand with enabling the civilian population to leave Rafah. It's not something that we will do while keeping the population locked in place. In fact, we'll do the very opposite. We'll enable them to leave because our consideration for reducing and minimizing civilian casualties has guided us and will continue to guide us in the future.
It's Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. One other thing to mention of note this morning as well is that an Israeli negotiating team are travelling to the Qatari capital Doha to continue talks about a potential ceasefire arrangement, one which it had been hoped would be in place by Ramadan. That didn't happen, but after a new Hamas proposal, an Israeli team is on the way, we believe, led by David Marnier, the head of Israel's Mossad. We know that they are going to try and negotiate over things that are still sticking points, like how many hostages and Palestinian prisoners would be released during any ceasefire agreement. So we expect those talks to resume today as well. And of course, we'll keep you up to date with that and everything else that's happening here in the Middle East as a day.
Thanks so much, Anna.